You squat close to the last heat of a small fire as the sky drains of color. The air cools fast. A child shifts and makes a soft sound. Someone reaches in and slides a stick into the coals, not to make a blaze, just to keep the glow alive. Outside that circle of light, the dark feels busy. Insects, distant calls, a branch snapping somewhere you can't see. This is the moment most of us imagine ending one way. Sun goes down, everybody sleeps. But did ancient humans really just fall asleep as soon as it got dark? Ancient humans probably did not all just fall asleep when the sun went down, and there was never one universal nighttime routine because ancient humans covers early Homo, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and early Homo sapiens across huge stretches of time. Some groups lived with snow seasons, some with wet heat, some in open grasslands, some near caves or built shelters. Predators weren't the same everywhere. Nights were longer in some places, shorter in others. Even the moon can change what feels possible. And then there's fire. Not every group had the same access to controlled fire or hearths. And using a fire is not the same thing as being able to make one anytime you want. Where a hearth existed, night didn't turn into daytime. It became a small zone you had to manage. Warmth, smoke, food smells, sleeping bodies, and listening. That's the twist. The camp doesn't simply shut down. It keeps moving in little ways. A hand feeds the flames. Ears track the sounds. A child wakes. Night is handled, not ignored. We treat night like a switch. Lights off equals sleep. This story treats night more like camping without a headlamp. So if we can't assume one routine, what clues can archaeology actually use to reconstruct a prehistoric night? A trowel scrapes gently, and a dark stain shows up in the soil. It isn't just dirt. It's ash mixed with tiny bits of charcoal, packed into a thin layer. A little farther out, stones form a rough ring. Nothing is standing anymore, but the pattern is familiar, a hearth that once held a controlled fire. So, how do you study a night that's gone? What physical evidence can tell us what people did after dark in prehistory? Archaeologists start with what fire leaves behind. Ash and charcoal layers tell you a fire happened here, not somewhere else. Burnt bone fragments can suggest food was cooked, or scraps were tossed into the coals. Heat can even change the sediment itself, baking the ground in a way that shows sustained warmth, not a quick accident. Then comes the part that turns a fireplace into a map of behavior. Around old living floors, the distribution of artifacts matters. Tools, flakes from tool repair, food remains, and sleeping spots often cluster in ways that make sense if people sat close to the heat and light, worked near the edge, and kept certain areas clearer. Here's the eerie moment. That thin charcoal layer can look like a black shadow in the soil, but it's really a timestamp of heat and light. It's the trace of people managing darkness, making a small zone where night could be used. Lighting has its own evidence too. Stone lamps with residue, torch marks, and soot in caves show humans could operate in deep darkness. That doesn't automatically mean nighttime, because caves are dark at noon. But it does mean artificial light was a tool. It's like reading a crime scene without CCTV. You infer actions from traces, the same way you see dog paw prints by a door, and know an animal waited there. If hearth traces are our strongest anchors, what exactly did fire change about prehistoric night, and what couldn't it do? A hand hovers over a bed of coals that are turning gray. Someone kneels close, blows gently, and slides in a few dry twigs. For a second, nothing happens. Then a thin flame catches, and the warmth comes back. But everything beyond that little circle stays black, only a few steps away. This is what fire did at night for some ancient humans. It didn't replace the sun. It carved out a small pocket of light and heat, where people could sit close, eat, calm a child, or do a bit of quiet work that doesn't need perfect light. So, did fire turn night into a safe, productive time for ancient humans? Sometimes, it probably made night more usable. But it was still local, smoky, and limited, and it didn't promise safety or let people work like it was daytime. A hearth can leave clear traces in the ground. Heated sediment, ash, and burnt remains can show that a group used fire in that spot and kept it going long enough to matter. But there's a critical detail that gets missed. Controlled fire is not the same thing as fire making. If you find a hearth, it tells you people tended a fire. It does not automatically tell you they could make a new one from scratch whenever they wanted. Keeping embers alive through the night can be easier than creating flame in wind or damp. And here's the twist. When the fuel runs low, the camp's tiny day collapses. The flames shrink, the smoke changes, and the circle of light pulls tight. If the embers die, the warmth dies with them, and the night rushes back in. That means someone might have spent part of the evening doing the unglamorous job of feeding the fire, not because they loved staring at flames, but because the whole group's comfort and options depended on it. Modern campers know this feeling. Maintaining a steady flame is one challenge. Starting one again, cold and tired in bad weather, is another. Fire didn't conquer darkness. It bargained with it, one handful of wood at a time. If the fire circle didn't erase the night, what happened when people tried to sleep inside it while the dark stayed right outside? A coal shifts and the faint light changes. The rest of the fire is gone, and the dark presses in close. You hear it first. A branch snaps somewhere beyond the warmth, then a distant call you can't place. Then an infant whimpers, small and urgent. One adult lifts their head. They sit up just enough to listen, eyes moving along the edge of the firelight where the ground turns to black. No shouting, no hero pose. Just a quick check, a hand reaching toward the coals, a quiet touch to settle the baby. And then they lie back down. How did ancient humans sleep, and were they keeping watch at night? For many ancient humans, sleep probably wasn't a single deep block that swallowed the whole camp. It could be broken by cold air, smoke, hunger, pain, and children who needed comfort. It could be broken by the simple fact that darkness makes everything uncertain. In the night, you can't see far, even with a hearth. Predators and rivals don't have to be close to feel close. That's why safety may have come less from assigned guards and more from the group itself. People clustered near heat. Someone kept an ear open. Someone woke up to feed the coals before they died. Another person stirred to check a sound, or to pull a hide higher over a shoulder. Modern hunter-gatherer sleep research is useful here as an analogy. In small groups, wakefulness can be spread out. Not everyone is asleep at the same moment, and brief awakenings happen naturally. That's the twist. A camp doesn't need a formal night watch to stay alert. A patchwork of micro-awakenings can create the same effect. Listening, fire tending, checking the dark, calming children, then slipping back into sleep. If you've ever slept outdoors and jolted awake at a sound, you've felt the same sensory reality. At night, the world is heard more than it's seen. So if not everyone slept deeply, what could people actually do near that weak light without turning night into a full work shift? A hand lifts a burning branch, and the cave around it stays black until the flame gets close. The wall is not flat. It bumps and dips, and soot smudges the stone. As the fire wavers, a painted animal on the wall seems to appear, vanish, then appear again, like it's breathing in the dark. So did ancient humans tell stories or perform rituals at night? And what about cave art? Around a campfire, it makes sense that evenings could turn social. Everyone is pulled into the same warm, lit spot. That's a good setup for teaching kids, planning tomorrow, settling arguments, and telling stories. But the hard part is that specific stories don't fossilize. Archaeology can show a hearth and people spending time near it. It can't record the words. Caves give a different kind of clue. Deep inside, there's no daylight at all, even at noon. Yet people went in anyway. Paleolithic research finds traces of lighting, torches, stone lamps, charcoal bits, and soot on ceilings and walls. That's the strongest anchor here. It tells us ancient humans used fire to function in darkness. And darkness can do something extra. Enclosed spaces, echoing sound, and flickering light can make shadows stretch, jump, and feel alive. That turning of still marks into moving impressions is a tool the night offers, even if it's happening in a cave during the day. You can feel the modern version. Firelight grabs attention, conversations get quieter, faces look different, shadows make you listen. So yes, ancient humans likely used firelit time for social life, and they clearly used flames to work in deep darkness. But we should separate what the evidence shows from what we wish we could hear. After all these possibilities, what's the most honest answer to what ancient humans did at night, and what should we stop assuming? A sharp tap clicks in the dark, close to the heat. A hand turns a stone flake between finger and thumb, feeling for the dull spot, then taps again to bring the edge back. Beside it, another pair of hands twists dry plant fibers, rolling them over and over until they bite into a thin cord. Near the coals, someone drags a few embers aside to warm a small patch of ground, careful not to flare the fire, just to make a safer, softer place where a child can keep sleeping. What jobs were worth doing at night in a fire-using camp? Not the big, far jobs. You're not tracking animals across open ground on a faint glow. You're not searching for tubers in the dark. Firelight doesn't reach far, and it doesn't stay steady. But right next to the hearth, some work is quiet, close, and forgiving. Coals need tending so the fire doesn't die or suddenly smoke. Food can be warmed, fat can be softened, and leftovers can be kept from going cold. A cracked handle can be tightened. A stone edge can be retouched with short, controlled taps. Hides can be scraped and folded, worked more by feel than by sight. A lot of this kind of work runs on touch and repetition. Your hands learn the motion. You keep the materials close. You check your progress by feel, not by distance vision. That's why it's plausible in low light. The finest carving, the longest straight cuts, and anything that depends on seeing far stays a daylight job. Archaeologists can't read a nightly schedule off the ground. But hearth-centered activity areas, and the mix of small tools and debris around them, fit the idea of a shared workstation. Small light, big payoff. It's the prehistoric version of prepping tomorrow before bed. Fix the edge, twist the cord, sort what you'll carry, keep the child warm, because daylight is for travel, hunting, and gathering. If the fire circle could support this kind of work and care, what else might it have supported? Teaching, storytelling, even rituals, and what evidence can, and can't, back that up? Before anyone speaks, someone wakes and reaches for the tool pile beside the hearth. The fire is low, mostly ash with a few embers. The ground shows what happened in the dark. Fuel pulled closer, a scraper moved from someone's feet, footprints around warmest patch. Someone slept, woke, shifted, listened, and settled again. So what did ancient humans do at night? The answer is not a schedule. It is pressure, cold, darkness, fuel, noise, and trust. There was no single routine. Cold, open country was different from trees, water, or a cave mouth. Season and weather mattered. So did danger, age, and whether a hearth was burning. Where fire was controlled and hearths existed, people likely gathered for warmth and light. They may have fed embers, cared for children, checked tools, repaired small items, talked quietly, or watched beyond the glow. Fire helped, but it did not erase risk. Smoke could sting, fuel could run low, animals could move nearby. One sound could change everyone's attention. A night checklist would be choices, not rules. Shelter, fire, spacing, broken sleep, small tasks, and someone awake while others rest. The evidence supports that much. Hearths, ancient lighting, and cautious sleep comparisons. It does not give us every hour. Our nights sit on top of this older problem. Screens, clocks, locked doors, and fixed work times are recent. Beneath them, bodies manage light, warmth, attention, and closeness while trying to rest safely. At dawn, the embers fade. Ash, tools, and footprints remain. The night was not empty. It was managed differently in every place. If you had to spend one night with only a small fire for light, what would you change first? Your sleep, your tasks, or how close you stay to others? If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay tuned for future videos.